Slow the motion, slow the road that you're on. Keep it going when the going gets rough. Just remember how a heavenly touch lasts forever. In the end, we are one. I have the patience in my soul, 'cause I know that it's worth it. These affirmations let me know that I'm already perfect. Are you that one? Say yes I am. 100 miles up, say yes I can. Is it our love? Say yes I am. Yes I am. Yes I am. Are you that one? Say yes I am. 100 miles up, say yes I can. Is it our love? Say yes I am. Yes I am. Yes I am. It's my life, so I tell me.
Welcome to the Ascension Academy podcast. I am your host, Tumai, and we also have
Audrey here.
this episode number three.
Yep. Number 3 for season 1. So during this season, we are focusing on essential oils and exploring all things health and wellness when using Mother Nature's scents and smells.
A little bit about me. I'm your dedicated breath facilitator and coach, helping raise awareness within your own body, but most importantly, within your own breathing mechanics.
And a bit about me, I'm your in-house aromatherapist and essential oil coach, and I'm here to help you gain insight into the incredible potential Mother Nature offers from her toolbox.
Today's podcast is dedicated towards a topic, and we've titled it Our Love Agreements and Essential Oils. It's been a present discovery for what happens when we fall out of love and often get into unconscious arguments, perhaps. And this topic in particular is one that's been moving in our space for the last few days, and we've had all of the support. So we're going to be covering that and covering essential oils and its direct connection to the signatures of different emotions throughout the body. In terms of an overall contents, what we're going to do here today in particular is we're going to talk and have a chat about the background and give some context as to the tension that's been in our relationship. And it's a real vulnerable and raw and supportive conversation, actually, a way where we can release and share, more importantly, and integrate what we're learning. I think often at times we think the people that have platforms or that talk on screen have perfect relationships behind screen, right, off camera, or that they have the perfect lives. And a lot of the time it's because of how we try to appear on social media versus showing every aspect and every spectrum of the way that we would like to live our lives. So some of the other topics that we're going to cover today, and I'll have Audrey maybe go over point number 2, 3.
Yep. So we have come up with a love agreement, which are some pointers that a good friend of ours helped us to put down on paper so that we can remind ourselves of these agreements. And we're going to be finding love through our struggle areas. That's a topic that we definitely have been struggling with whenever we get in our stuck states, and being able to bridge the gap to create the love agreements with our friend Layla. So we're going to break that down.
I do want to give a shout out to Layla. She dropped everything to support and help us out. And we're going to go over the love agreements that we crafted together in detail and how we managed to stumble upon the essential oils that would support what our body needed, what our mind needed, and more importantly, what our relationship needed. So a little bit of context and background let's start off with, and I'll have maybe perhaps Audrey just begin there with a little bit of her insights, and I'll add on as we go.
Well, the context is really about how whenever we have these breakdowns in relationships, we get into a bit of a cycle, a pattern, right? And from the perspective of a woman and the perspective of the man, it's very difficult to really align our perspectives. It's difficult to even understand each other's language. Even though we're speaking the English language, there's so much misinterpretation or misunderstanding because we actually define words very differently. So it was trying to navigate through those trenches whenever there was a breakdown in communication.
A lot of the tricky parts also is that not only do we find ourselves, and when I say we, those that are listening, our audience and the members that are inside of the Facebook group, thank you so much. I'll put a quiz inside or a poll on you voting what your favorite love language is for today's topic. But a lot of the time, it's tricky to track because we are running a business, then you have a family dynamic, and then you have the dynamic of your relationship with your loved one and your partner. But then also you have a dynamic of the relationship of yourself, you, the individual, and our ability to have our independent needs and values met, and our ability to bring those parts, our best selves, our best foot forward into the relationship and allow it to become interdependent versus it being codependent, or even like at times I just find that it'd be overwhelming. These are some of the tricky dynamics that we're dealing with. And so for us, what we always found was Audrey and I are both very different personalities. And for me, I can speak for myself, is I've always been very sure of myself. I've been leadership orientated and sports orientated. And so my communication has been shaped by both a corporate world, running a finance business and being a banker full time for many years. And even before that, I was working on construction site, and I have tradey tendencies and sort of rough edges there that I love about me, that I bring into the relationship too, into this current day with Audrey. And so the language or linguistics that I use, the mindset that I bring, and my loops or cycles of how I view projects in our shared business are completely different to Audrey, the individual. And so this is where we can get into destructive entanglements and misunderstandings and miscommunication. And so, Audrey, maybe take us through your background and where you're coming from.
Yeah. So my background is primarily supporting my child, my son, who's now 15 years old, and being very nurturing, coming from the space of being very accommodating, which is something I brought up in a previous podcast, and always putting myself last, right? Always wanting to really step up and help other individuals in the family. And that did come to a rather abrupt halt as well in my previous relationship, and not knowing how to meet each other's needs. What I have to say is it takes a lot to make a relationship work. It actually takes both parties to be really, really committed to your self-worth, self-work and development. So yeah, it's been quite the journey for me, getting to know myself again, getting to create a new way, a new personality, or discovering again who I am that I lost over those many years, falling into that stagnation of just being the way I was being for many years, and no one highlighting or bringing forth the issues, right? We get stuck in our own little bubble, and we think that we're always right about things, and we're very stubborn. We don't want to change our ways. That's very natural in every relationship. But essentially, yeah, being accommodating, being nurturing, putting myself last are some of the keys. And linguistically, again, it comes from a very different space, not a corporate space, So coming from a place of where women speak to women on a very nurturing basis.
And so you can see how when we're running a business at this level and wanting to support the family, given that we've got a similar value, the approach or how we do it is entirely different. And so for many months, I thought that, like the mistakes that I made, I thought that it was normal to operate at a level of perhaps focus and precision that I've always worked at. And that everybody is like that because I was in a marketplace with a whole lot of other men that were just like that. And so I'm competing against that on a regular basis. And so that shaped a lot of the miscommunication, number one. And then number two, the common mistake that I had was that I made here was that I had expectations that I brought to the projects that we would touch in business. So, for example, we would have a project such as creating a masterclass for essential oils, or creating a webinar, or doing slides together, creating a lead magnet, all the way through to making a marketing business plan, or any project that would happen. It is my normal base level to see it as something that I get to conquer and that I bring everything to the table. I go 110%, and it is normal for me to output all of my energy into the project and complete the cycle to get a win outcome. And the words that I use for win is very different to how Audrey would perceive or receive win to be. She would have a dynamic that's created
Yes.
in her of a win-lose scenario. Whereas for me in sports, it's always been like, it's always either you win or that you win, because I'm always going to pick it back up and try again. And I've always had a cycle that I would complete a project, and the back end I would always win, and then I would celebrate and I'd move on with more energy to another project. And that was my normal way of doing things. And so I had a mentality of anything that I knew I desired to touch, any project that I desired to complete, I knew I could turn it into gold, because that was my regular way of being.
Yeah, and the way you were approaching it and the energy you brought to it was, in my mind, like too hardcore, too aggressive, too like focused on one thing. And a lot of you, especially in this group, a lot of women in my network might be able to relate to us just being, la-di-da, let's just support each other and be nurturing and loving, and let's not use any harsh language, and let's pat each other on the back, and good job, even if you didn't complete it. So it was really different going into this work relationship, where the language is different, the energy is different, it's very masculine. But I understand that's very important too, to get the job done, right, in the marketplace. So it was adjusting to that, and it took a long time until we had a breakdown, or I had a breakdown, because with any breakdown comes an amazing breakthrough, right? So it was just being able to accept that this wasn't working and pressing the pause button and really looking at what was going wrong, because it was a pattern.
Some extra parts to the context that we can provide here is that my perspective and my lens on life, the difficulties and pain that I've experienced, is dramatically different to what Audrey has experienced. And so even that has had a major impact on how we act and feel about circumstances that that we experience together. And so, for an example, when I was growing up, my mum had raised 5 children on her own as a single mum, and so on the back end, there was a really tricky situation a few times over where mum just didn't have any shelter for us when we were being raised, and I was going to high school, and I would have to go live with friends, church members, and there would never be any real like stability in my life. So living on the street or not having food that night was just something that I would go through, and I would move on to the next day and try my best to impact the day at maybe a maturity level that wasn't necessarily deemed to be normal for an 11 or 12-year-old. And so my growth has had to be very fast. I almost had to skip a lot of the childhood that I could enjoy in high school, the playful moments, because of some of these events. And so I need to acknowledge that that also has an impact in the way that I see projects when I work on them in business, that I have a pace to myself, that I move with speed, and that I see winning, and I've created a paradigm where me continually succeeding or meeting the achievement, like something that I see in my head as the ideal outcome or my desired outcome, I can achieve that in 2 days or in 1 week or in 3 weeks or in 1 month. I can get that done. I know I can. And when I get that done, this euphoric experience moves through my body. And the truth is that's actually been created to keep me safe and to move me away from the feeling of poverty that I've experienced when I was young as a child. And so you can see how homelessness and the lack of structure and support that I needed as a adolescent has directly impacted my way of being in the relationship. And for Audrey, it is vastly different, and I'll get her to go through that.
Right. So for me, it's quite a different scenario. I've always felt that I've been protected from any misfortune. Although I do have a tolerance that's, because I'm used to growing up in a family business where dad actually was at the forefront. He was leading the family and the family businesses. He was taking the brunt of everything, but protecting me from feeling lack, not having enough. Him and mum worked really hard to make sure that my sister and I were provided for. So in that sense, I did see the hardship and the work that it takes. So I do have a really strong work ethic. But at the same time, I don't think that I experienced quite the hardship that is required to really run after things, to go after things hard, because I haven't felt the pain. I haven't felt the hot stove quite enough. The impact wasn't quite the same as what Tumai's experienced. So in that sense, time, the concept of time and completing projects is very different for me. There's less of an urgency. There's less of a defined destination, right? So that impacted us.
Yeah, we also noticed that Audrey created a place where she could continue to be safe and almost not allow or resist an impact to hit her. So she would preemptively or proactively go about a way to set up the scenario or a scenario where there was no possibility of there being any impact at all.
Or no possibility of failing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Fear of failure. So I just avoid doing it.
Yes, it's phenomenal. And then you could see as my character played out, somebody who would push for growth, push the envelope, say what needs to be said, and make things happen, cause a change or a shift, because I was comfortable with it, wasn't quite resonating with Audrey because she would have a program that would require safety in order to operate, and I would require there to be breakthroughs regularly to have an anchoring feeling of success.
Yeah, but the thing is about having this fear of failure and creating this safety net is it's a false sense of safety, false sense of security, because it's going to bite you in the backside eventually anyways. It's just a matter of time. So it's either you feel the pain now or you feel the pain later, and that's what I've learned.
Yeah, so this is a bit of the context and the background. We would go through our ups and downs, and when it comes to even communicating and linguistics, the terminology that I would use that's common to someone who has been raised in Australia for all of his life is very different to someone who's internationally travelled to many different countries. Let's just isolate and take Singapore, for example, where Audrey has lived for a large portion of her time. They speak in a very subtle, gentle manner at times, and a lot of her social circles are the same. So if I was to be direct with her, it would be, in her perception, it'd be completely misunderstood. And me putting everything on the table to explore options is almost triggering to her, because for her, she's never been in a relationship where anybody had given her any options to begin with. They only gave her the perception of freedom, but she never actually had the true freedom to choose.
To choose, yeah.
And now that she's given it in our relationship, we're finding that she requires work on that muscle to have the ability to create her own options, to become the master of her own destiny, and to bring that to the table, and for us to work on that together. And this is some phenomenal realizations that we're having inside of our relationship.
Yeah, it was a hidden thing. I didn't know I had the freedom to put my options on the table. It was just not a muscle, like you said, and I wasn't even aware that I wasn't doing it. That's the strangest thing. And Tumai was expecting me to, but I would just be like, no, let's just go with that idea that you've presented. And I didn't even know that I was doing it.
You're right.
But it's so disempowering because I didn't realize I had a voice. I didn't exercise a muscle to actually think creatively and to bring my ideas, right?
Yeah, and for me, I've always waited for a nuanced perspective, for someone to give me feedback or to say, hey, out of the 5 options, 3 of them are really good, but this one in particular is great. That would put us in the best position. But what we could do there is if we just alter this and alter that, then it makes better sense. Like I've always been waiting for someone to be on the table with me and producing results and choosing our life together. And that's what has been tricky, because we lacked the ability to communicate and to get on the same page.
A lot of it is just autopilot. I don't even know I'm doing it, right? Because we've been so complacent in our ways for so long. And it's definitely tricky and difficult and challenging, and it challenges all your beliefs. It challenged me to make me believe that I was needing to give up a part of me to be in this new relationship, but that's not the case at all, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah.
some really, really good stuff. I want to again say that when we had our breakdown, it was going for about a day and a half. And we had friends that were going to come over on. So we had a bit of a breakdown the day before on a Friday, and we had friends that were scheduled to come over on the Saturday afternoon to do goal setting. I've created a journal over 8 years of sort of goal setting and getting real traction on where I want, what my desired outcome is in life. And so I created a journal. I've got a mastermind group of people that are like-minded, and we wanted them to come over on the Saturday for us to go through the goal setting process together. Now, for anyone that's ever held any of these, you needed to be in a particular space, and you need to review your notes and make sure you're available to all of the people that are coming in. And so us having a bit of a blow up on the Friday really put me in a tricky position. So what ended up happening was, because I'm open and I'm okay with, I don't typically save face. I just say it for what it is. And I texted the group and just said straight up, hey, this is what's happening, and I don't feel like it's a good energy to set any goals. And that started, and this is how amazing and how important it is to have friends that not only support you and push you for more, but catch you as well when you fall. And Layla is exactly that type of person. She dropped everything just to come over and talk us through the pains, but really be there to listen and to balance both a masculine energy to speak to me and a feminine energy to relate and empathize with Audrey, and to be able to do those two roles is phenomenal. So
She did an amazing job.
My hats off to Audrey. So what we
Layla.
hats off to Layla. Yeah, that's right. What we created and what the outcome was after a 3-hour to 4-hour conversation was our love agreements. At a high level, really what we were able to do was to explore and identify where our main pain points were, and where we could find the pain points is where we could find a place to agree. Not a place to expect that this is going to be the rule or the norm, but when we make an agreement, it means that both Audrey and I agree, meaning we both have acknowledged what is required, and it's between us both versus an expectation, which is my perception and lens on a situation pushed upon Audrey. And that's at times what us guys get into. We do that at times and we don't even realize. So an agreement is completely different. I'm going to have Audrey read through the first agreement. We have 5 of them and we've signed the bottom of the sheet. And then we're going to read through them, and we're going to continue on about talking about some of these individual points in the essential oils. Go for it, Audrey.
Yep. So the first agreement is let's agree to hold space for each other as we navigate the right choice of words that express each other's intentions.
Great, thanks for that. And number 2 is, can you please help me understand alternative words that I can resonate with instead of corporate choice of words you use?
Number 3, let's agree to give each other space right now because I can see we are both feeling tension with each other. So let's do what we need to do individually and come back to each other when we're feeling centered.
Agreement number 4 is, let's remind ourselves to acknowledge each other's strengths and be vulnerable enough to ask each other for help on how to draw on those strengths. That's a big one for me.
And number 5, let's agree to listen to each other for the sake of listening and not try to fix each other. So for example, is there anything else? Do I need to listen to you from a place of helping you find a solution, or do you just need to vent? And from what you're saying or expressing, I feel that.
Yeah. So how we arrived at these with our, I guess you could say Layla as a relationship coach, she's also studying in the field or industry of psychology, was we found that when we were able to be with her from her unbiased eyes, she was able to see our main traps or difficult parts and observe the areas that we struggled with. And we worked with the opposite. So she created a way out by working with the opposite pole. And also, like, say, for example, if Audrey struggled with some of the linguistics or language when it comes to relationships or being in an interrelationship, being at that level, giving Audrey language and space to explore and create the language for herself. That was some of the main approaches here for Layla. So we're going to break down some of the details as to like the first part, and we're up to now the area where we get to share the essential oils of choice. So with these love agreements, each word and the way that we've framed the sentences for our relationship, there's different parts that we each work on, and we've chosen different essential oils. I've got the ones here. And we've looked into the emotions behind those essential oils. We've looked into the alarm point or the application point in the area. And it's really telling as to the places that we apply, to where we feel the tension, to the places that we need to relax and release. It's so interesting. So we're going to start off with love agreement number 1. And if you're just joining, we're talking about the struggles that Audrey and I have had in our relationship, the assistance and help that we've got from a really good friend of ours, and how we arrived and created our own personal love agreements. I printed like 5 copies of this off. One's blue tacked to the fridge, another one's next to
In the toilet.
2 toilets, another one is in the bedroom somewhere, just so that we can review this on a regular basis. And the love agreements were created to enable us to not just fall back in love with each other, because we lately the last 2 days we've been really connected and close and intimate in a way that we haven't been for a while because of the tension that we've been getting into and the misunderstandings and the miscommunication. So these agreements have given us a bridge and a place to be and act from in a beautiful way. So let's unpack love agreement number 1 with a little more detail. So go for it, Audrey.
All right, let's just repeat that one. Let's agree to hold space for each other as we navigate the right choice of words that express each other's intentions. So this is interesting because I think we came to this agreement because there was so much misunderstanding in the choice of words Tumai was using and how I interpreted those words to mean. So it's really good to just be able to have space to unpack or ask, okay, is there another way that you can communicate what you're trying to say to me? Instead of me reacting or the other person reacting immediately from the choice of words that they've used, because sometimes they don't mean what they're saying. We're misinterpreting what they're saying. And it's really, really been fascinating getting to know Tumai, because he is definitely very different to what I'm used to, or many of us are used to hearing from other people. How many of you can relate to this, where someone might say something, but we then start in our head going, what does he mean? What is he saying? Does he mean this? And Tumai, when he says things, he says what he means and he means what he says, but it doesn't come from a place of, it doesn't come from a vindictive place or an angry place. It literally just means what he says, and he has no intention to hurt the other person. He just says it for what it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, because we arrived at the realization that a lot of men in society, or a lot of people in society, say one thing but mean half things somewhere else, or they're like half truths, or they don't really mean what they say. And what that's done, especially for Audrey, because she's been in a long-term relationship for a while, and it's really new to her, and she needs to adjust to the realization of the language that we're using. And for her, she has created a state of being where she has a habit of tiptoeing around the topic and how we say, like, she doesn't want to cause any attention
Confrontation.
or confrontation, because she doesn't want to be out of her comfort zone. So can you imagine me trying to truly connect and communicate with Audrey when she's trying to tiptoe around? It makes it really difficult in a relationship where I just say things for what they are. Now, the next piece of this is I wanted to also give some attention towards the fact that we've created love agreements and the word love itself. So when I was thinking about love, I thought that the essential oil, or perhaps the location that it needs to be applied to, was, say, for example, maybe essential oil might be joy, or it might be perhaps frankincense or lavender.
Or
some
rose.
Of these. Rose, yeah. Mm-hmm. But in actual fact, with all of the books that I've looked at, the one essential oil that is constantly repeated here is one of the most complex blends that Young Living has, and it's one that I use regularly inside of breath work, and it's the release oil. Wow. It's the release oil blend. And it got me scratching my head and wondering why, if we're making love agreements, why is, for the word love, why is it so connected deeply to the oil of release? Well, it seems like not only does release support love and work on feelings such as feeling wrong or dejected, and it also states that it works on the feeling of the loss of identity. It would seem to me that a lot of the time, especially true for me, that I'm carrying around so much feelings of me making other people wrong, or making myself wrong, or my own identity or perception of myself, that it's I'm even unable to receive love. Because love is just something that exists between us. It's almost a natural state. It's something that birthed us. So for us to generate love is kind of not the approach. It's actually to release what is blocking the love, to create space for love to simply exist.
That's a great one.
Now, the alarm point for release when working with the feeling of love is what we call the alarm point of the eye or the brain, and that's at the back of the skull. It's not at the top of the spine, but it's a little lower and it's a little wider apart. So my ability to work with, and if I'm wanting to open up more space to receive love, applying release oil to the back of my skull at the bottom would be the perfect place. Anything else here that I want to speak about? No, I just wanted to start there. Now, on the first love agreement, it says, let's agree to hold space. So I want to also acknowledge the word agree. We've already spoken about that. For Audrey and I, just to agree to hold space. To hold space for each other as we navigate the right choice of words that express each other's intentions. Sometimes when I say things in our relationship, and because I mean it so directly, Audrey's still having trouble to catch those words. And at times she's wanting to tiptoe around those words and avoid them, when in actual fact, we need to be able to, Audrey and I need to be able to create a place where she can ask for clarification. And even to ask for clarification is very daring for her. So that's something that I want to talk about as well. And I want you to maybe give your last little insights. That's enough from my side.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and type that love agreement number 1 inside the comments, just so it's always there.
I think, yes, holding space allows or gives me permission to really move and wriggle around a little, because otherwise when Timai says something and it comes across and lands in a wrong way, I typically, my alarm bells will go off and go, oh, there's going to be some confrontation. I'm going to start getting defensive, right? To defend myself because I feel like I'm being attacked. And so immediately I start to back off and not even want to be involved in the conversation. I start to retreat. And how many of you can relate to that when you retreat, fight or flight response? So in this case, I'm in flight response. I want to run the other way. I don't want to be I don't want to have this confrontation. So just the word holding space somehow it feels like a cushioning effect, like that it's a safe place to be, right? So that I can actually get to the bottom of it and clarify exactly what he's saying instead of being afraid that there's going to be a blow up.
Now, the next point to this is an extension. So it gives Audrey a bridge or language to ask for clarification. So she's to ask, can you please help me understand alternative words that I can resonate with instead of corporate choice of words you use?
In particular, corporate choice of words in a male-dominated environment sometimes can come off really, really difficult in my perspective. And so it can, like for me to perceive, I perceive it as really harsh or really direct. And, being a daddy's girl, I was never really placed in that sort of a situation. And also just being in a society or a culture where women typically are not outspoken and we just support quietly and toe the line and support the man in their role. So yes, that's probably, and for me to be able to now be given permission to actually ask, can you give me some other words that might land better with me, right?
Like this morning, for example, we were driving from the school drop-off with Audrey's son, and we're going to the gym, and Audrey is still working on improving her navigation with Melbourne and driving, but she uses Google Maps. And so
Don't tell everyone.
instead of seeing that the way that Google Maps was suggesting for her to drive was not the best way, and that it was really difficult for her to pull out and get that way because of peak hour traffic, she goes, oh, what other way should I choose? And I said, well, if you use your eyes and think a little, you might be able to come up with an ideal way or an alternative option. And for women, that's really like straightforward. But like guys say this to guys all the time. It's actually in the spirit of not taking
It personally.
Oh, it's more in the spirit of letting them know that they can work on that muscle and they can get really good at that if they just open up a little bit and quickly assess things. And
Yeah.
so guys kind of speak to other guys like that because we're in a competent world for men. But in our space, it's not necessarily like that.
Yeah, it was a very good awareness because obviously we had already worked through this yesterday. And so what he said didn't trigger me the same way it would have done if before today. But we were aware of the use of those words, like use your eyes. And I said to him, you know what's really funny is prior to today, I would have perceived it so differently. It would have carried a different energy. And to me, it's like, yeah, use your eyes. Are you blind? Like, that's how I would interpret it. Like, are you blind? What's wrong with you? Yeah, so it's really interesting that can trigger somebody, right? But that's not his intention.
Yeah, it literally means, hey now, like, no need to be lazy. You can see the traffic in the peak hour, and the only other option, instead of turning right, is to turn left, and perhaps we can find other options if you turn left. So it's really just to activate her mind so that she can do it herself versus me taking the task off her. And these are some of the nuanced differences of a nurturing mother versus perhaps, like in my case, a father that needs to move someone who is a adolescent teenager into a fully competent operational male in Jordan, her son. So
Yep.
these are the different language types that we come across.
Yeah, and it's phenomenal. I've seen such leaps and bounds in how my son has changed his whole view on life and how he perceives himself and how confident he is now speaking his mind. And yeah, it's just been amazing. So it's definitely working, the choice of words that you use. Yep.
So agreement number 3 is let's agree to give each other space right now because I can see we are both feeling tension with each other. So let's do what we need to do individually and come back to each other when we're feeling centered. So this one stemmed from when we would have a blow up, I would need some space and I would go to a different location and go somewhere else, undetermined as to when I would return, go hit the gym, go for a cruise, drive through the Dandenong Ranges, just some space for myself. And I don't know when I'm coming back. And that's obviously not healthy in a relationship. So we've got now an agreement that provides a balance between both.
Yeah, it's just extra communication. And some of the oils that actually I came up with that's related to this is oftentimes when you get into these bouts, I have this sense of feeling lonely or lost, at a loss. So the oils that really address loneliness and loss is, for loneliness, it's white angelica, right? And basically the affirmation that is connected to this one is, I go to a loving space. And the place to put that is actually the heart point, which is below the ring finger of the left hand. And interestingly enough, like if you guys know your wedding ring goes on the second last finger of your left hand because the point below that is the heart, right? So that's where you'd place the white angelica. And it really helps to connect you with all that is. So that was really interesting. And then the other oil that I resonate with in this instance is grounding. Grounding addresses the feelings and emotions of lost, L-O-S-T. The opposite of lost is knowing your direction, right? An inner knowing. The affirmation is, I connect with my inner knowing so that you have a sense of direction, you know where you're going, you don't feel lost. And that area is quite low on the lower back, near to the base of the spine, but not quite. So those are the 2 oils that I am going to use more frequently to help to balance me in those areas.
That's cool. And for me, there is one essential oil that comes up and it is harmony.
I love that one.
So it's not in focus at the moment, but harmony as an essential oil supports movement by working on stubbornness and sarcasm.
Stubbornness.
Yeah, and that's very much me. I am very stuck in my ways at times and I'm very opinionated, and that's okay because that's me.
Yep.
And it also helps with the feeling of hostility Harmony supports all of these things. So often when we want to get movement in our relationship, I should be using harmony, and the location point or the alarm point is the upper back and the shoulders, specifically where the traps are. But this is really telling because that's where all anger is held too. So hostility and anger, very similar emotions. So upper back and shoulders are the alarm point for harmony, and that would be really supportive for us to even preemptively or proactively support us before we even get to having to work on this agreement or get to this particular stage in our relationship. So a lot of these love agreements, and what I love about it, are they are helping us catch it way before anything sort of gets escalates or gets shoved down and it comes up in another situation.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about this particular agreement too.
Yeah, and this is, Tumai has an amazing knack to identify patterns. And patterns are things that I'm not that great at identifying. So him bringing it to awareness has been amazing. It's allowed us to really work on things. And these patterns appear in different scenarios. So sometimes you may not even identify or spot them like he can. So what these patterns are underlying principles that are just a little bit, you're just not being aware of those underlying principles. And when you can become aware of them, you can actually apply them to different scenarios in your life versus like every time we have a blowout, I say, well, this is a unique scenario. This has never happened before. But he sees an underlying pattern that's caused the scenario to happen. So that's been a really interesting learning experience.
And I think why this is so grand for Audrey and so well timed is because I love our relationship, and I love it so much that I support the growth in any direction that it needs to go. I find it's my utmost importance, and I think it's really important for men to support the growth of their women, just as much as we protect them. I would say just under that is to support their growth. Some parts that are coming up in me right now is that helping Audrey create the muscle or work on the muscle to be more available and more present in the relationship, to help her identify and to proactively work toward love and affection on a regular basis, toward acknowledgement and support of the partner, is something that she's never really had the space to do, because in previous relationships it was never required of her to do it. And that doesn't mean that's also applicable in our relationship. In fact, it should be something that we draw closer to, nearer to, because we want Audrey and we want our women to be able to experience all of life through us as partners and as men. So that's something that's present for me. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Let's go on to number 4 of the love agreements.
Yeah, you go ahead and read that out and I'll continue typing.
So let's remind ourselves to acknowledge each other's strengths and be vulnerable enough to ask each other for help on how to draw on those strengths. Now, this is a completely new thing for me as well. Like, often we don't take the time to really consider our partner's strengths and to acknowledge them for where they shine. And being able to say, hey, you're really good at this, teach me how to do that, right? Teach me how to draw on that strength of yours.
For me, love agreement number 4 is really important because often I skip over the acknowledgement of Audrey, and in particular, emphasizing and focusing on her strength and saying that what I've noticed is you bring this value to the table. I skip over that and I continue on with suggestions, options, or solutions. And that's been really detrimental to not only the communication, but to our relationship, because it doesn't build up another person. It actually breaks them down because they're putting in the investment into us. and all we need to do is verbally acknowledge them. And so my focus is going to be on that in particular. I'm going to, if I was to create more of a muscle towards it, I'd be doing it on purpose, regularly, and maybe even over the top, just so I can navigate my way around it. And then with time and application, it'll just become a muscle. It'll be something that's extremely natural. But because it's something that's hardly practiced, I need to develop that. I get to develop that.
Yeah, that's great. And then number 5, I'll read that out while you type it. Is that good? Or is there
I just
anything you
want to
wanted
see
to
if
add?
there's anything that I want to add here. I also want to add that the essential oil that I found that will support me in this is purification.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, it's something that I kind of see as a cleaning product, to be honest with you. Like we use it in the bathroom and in our clothes, and it's got this eucalyptus.
No, lemongrass.
Lemongrass.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's got that. Let's have a look.
I'm not sure if it has what other oils are in there.
Yeah, it's probably because I remember eucalyptus as kind of having this effect.
Refreshing,
this
cleansing, right? Energy.
this scent to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But purification helps release violence or anger, and it supports recognition. It is the affirmation that's backing it is safe to be seen. The other side of recognition is freedom. So I've often found that even in the reverse role where I've asked Audrey to practice recognizing what I bring to the table, and she's practicing how to acknowledge me. If I work with purification, I get to not only receive or support recognition within my own self, but actually the higher goal towards this is freedom, to feel free. And the realization that I've had is that when I'm angry or upset or stubborn or hostile, it blocks me from my pathway to feeling recognized or free. Because even if Audrey was to verbally do it in her own way to recognize me, when I'm upset at that time, I'm not in receivership of that recognition. So purification helps support all of those areas. And the application or the alarm point is called the filter area, or it's also at the top of the spine. It's really at the base here around at the bottom of the skull, but top of the spine area. And it reminds me that when I went to South America, I got a auricular massage kind of therapy, and all of it was working around the base of the spine and base of the skull. So and that also tells me that I'm I'm very heaty in the top of my head a lot of the time. So yeah, I do need to release and use purification to support that. So
Yeah, you're very logical minded, and we have a laugh about it now, but I bring a lot of the emotional elements and he brings a lot of the logical sides of him. So we tend to clash there. But on that point of purification, the other side of that is I've got this oil that I looked up that I need is abundance. Abundance addresses the emotion of not feeling enough, not enough. So it's really hard for me to show up and acknowledge and give, praise or whatever you want to call that to the other person when I'm not feeling enough myself, right? When my bucket's not full. When my bucket's full, I can give more love out to the other person or acknowledge them. So the other side of that is plenty, feeling enough. And the affirmation that to use with this one, I like this, is I ask and I accept. And the alarm point where you would place abundance is on the heart center in the mid region here, heart center. Yep.
So I'll get Audrey to read out the last and final one and speak about that in detail as well.
Mm-hmm. Let's agree to listen to each other for the sake of listening and not trying to fix each other. If we were to unpack that, I think a lot of people can agree to this, including some of my girlfriends who have told me recently that they often don't listen just to listen. How many of you listen and then just can't help but offer advice, right? Or try to fix it because it's in our nature, especially women. We just want to help, but oftentimes have we asked permission? Have we asked for permission to help? maybe the other person just wants to vent. So some of the questions under this is there anything else? You know, because sometimes we jump in and go, I can help you with that. Or, no, this is what you do. Just do this. But just pause for a moment and say, is there anything else you want to share? The other one is, do I need to listen to you from a place of helping you find a solution, or do you just need to vent? And oftentimes I would get confused, right? When you were venting or saying something, I would be very confused because I don't know what his intention is. Like, what do you want me to do? Do you need me to solve this? Why don't you just do that? Like, it's such a simple thing to do to rectify this problem. Why are you not doing this? And he knows it's a simple rectification, but he didn't ask me to solve it, right? And if I had taken the time to just ask, do you want me to help you find a solution, or do you want to vent? And so the oil that I came up with here is, because I'm in a state of confusion, I don't know what his intention is. The oil for me is magnify your purpose. And so the other side of confusion is focus, knowing that I am centered and focused. And the alarm point for that is the lower back, right to the left. It's to the left of the life force alarm point. Yeah. So that's really interesting.
Fascinating. So yeah, absolutely. Let's agree to listen to each other for the sake of listening and not trying to fix each other. And there are examples verbatim for Audrey. Now, for me in this scenario, at times I need help with accepting what is, and that would help solve a lot of things. But also just I need help with acceptance in general. So the essential oil that's supporting me on the love agreement of number 5 is acceptance. Now, acceptance helps with emotions such as insecurity, embarrassment, and the lack of belonging. And a lot of the time when I've needed Audrey to listen to me and not to solve, and she's gone straight into solution mode, a lot can be also said about my reaction to that and how I get angry and upset at that. I throw my hands. I go, oh gosh, like, man, I say I do the wrong thing and paint her with a broad brush, and I say, oh, women, man, they need to learn just to listen. Listen to listen, not listen to fix me. No need to fix me, you know? And that's coming from a place, and I need to accept where people are at, right? So it provides a pathway of clarity, and perhaps this is a really good one for you too, Audrey, acceptance, because what I found out in terms of the alarm point here is that it provides a pathway to clarity due to its application on an alarm point called fungus, and this alarm point works on our misconceptions. So when we misunderstand and missee things for what they are, what happens is there's confusion.
Yes.
And we're looking to get clarity in our relationship, or to even ask for clarity. Acceptance would be one of those first steps. So interestingly enough, the alarm point for this acceptance essential oil, when working with acceptance, is just below this chest line here, but it's in the diaphragm area. And so all of this area has to do with empowerment, and your ability to know you, to know who you are, right? So this is a great one for us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and acceptance really prevents a lot of issues coming up later. Like, it precedes forgiveness. So when you can accept, you can truly let go and forgive the other person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So if you're just watching or joining or listening on Spotify or any of our other areas which we put the podcast, we're just covering our love agreements and how we found them. We gave some context as to the breakdowns that we've had recently, both in business but in our own personal relationships, and how we had a beautiful friend of ours, Layla, who is both a coach but also working in the psychological world. She came and was acting as an intermediary for us to create what we call now our new love agreements.
Yeah.
We've covered those, and this is going to be a place where we can bridge and support our own relationship, because when we have regular tension on projects that we're working on, we didn't even realize that we were falling out of love. that we weren't able to be intimate because we had such a focus and emphasis on having to be more about business and putting our energy and conserving all of ourselves just for work. And date nights had become sort of an irregular moment for us. And so we wanted to go live on this podcast, share some of the breakthrough moments that we had, but also allow us to integrate this in conversation, to come out and say, hey, like, you know, this is real, this is raw, this is who we
I
are.
think it's so important because if we weren't vulnerable and we weren't truthful in what we were going through, in that group chat that we had where we had to cancel our appointment with this group, cancel our plans to do goal setting together, if we weren't vulnerable and open and raw, then Layla would never have offered to come over and support us. And just her offering and us accepting took a lot of courage as well.
Yeah,
And
we're
so-
almost like suffering in silence, eh, Audrey?
And that happens with a lot of people, a lot of couples, a lot of relationships. And ultimately, true courage comes from vulnerability, and the willingness to learn and grow really takes a lot from both parties.
So I want to, as a last point of reference here, last area to cover, I want to talk about some of the benefits or what the tangible results were and the outcomes were when we were able to realign, recommunicate, and fall back in love with the present moment and with each other. What has that rendered for us, and what have you found in terms of the results? I'll have you share first.
You know, it's really interesting just being able to express how I was feeling and having Layla there in the room listening to us. This tension just disappeared from my body. I felt so light. I felt heard. I felt acknowledged. So it's really important to find someone or a safe place and safe space to do that. So find that person you can connect with. Don't suffer in silence, right? But the other thing is, once that was released from my body, whatever that energy was, that was making me play small, making me play safe, what naturally happened was I felt more energy. I felt more focused. I knew that we were aligned and we were going in the same direction. I no longer feel like we were at odds with each other. And what happened was I was able to show up on camera and be on this podcast and the last one before this, more present and more truthful to who I am, and less afraid to take a chance and less afraid to make mistakes, right?
Yeah, she's been editing and she's been using technology and she's been asking questions. And before, it was like operating on a fear program that she didn't want to, what was it? Make, like you wanted to work around and not step on people's feet. What do we call that?
Just not confrontational. No.
Confrontation. She wanted to avoid confrontation.
To avoid failure as well. And I wanted to avoid discovering my weaknesses, because I am very weak with technology. I am, but these are all stories in the end. Like, we buy into these stories that we tell ourselves, like, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, or I'm going to make a mistake, I'm going to look stupid, people are going to judge me, right? So, yeah.
It's final. Like, those affirmations have a finality to it. It's a full stop. It's I am not good at technology. That doesn't acknowledge that you can grow into using technology. It doesn't acknowledge that you have the infinite ability to learn, that you've been blessed with a heart and a mind and a spirit and a soul that breathes you, that you have the capacity to grow.
Yeah.
And so when we have that finality in life, well, then everything's final. It's done.
Yeah, but however,
finished.
there's this driving force behind me now being willing to take on the new challenges and things that I have to learn. And that driving force is that we have clarity in where we want to go together. There's a clearer vision, a clearer goal, a clearer destination, like you've already booked the ticket to Disney World, right? So, yeah, it's been a lot of progress over the past couple of days.
So as a summary, the oils that I get to use during my work with my love agreements and in our relationship is release oil. Release oil supports love by releasing the things that actually block love, and it creates space for love to naturally exist. That was one of the key points. I went over the alarm points for us to apply it or how I'm going to use it. The next one that I spoke about was harmony and how harmony supports movement by working with stubbornness and sarcasm, and also the feeling of hostility. I spoke about the alarm point of this being the upper back, and how the upper back also has a direct correlation to anger, which is held in the shoulders. The last two that I spoke about for me to work with is purification, which is going to help with violence or anger, the alarm point being the liver. And it also supports recognition. And this was one of my needs that I require in my relationship that Audrey gets to work with as well. And my last one is acceptance. So acceptance was what I've recently touched on, how it helps with emotions such as insecurity, embarrassment, but also provides belonging because it creates clarity through a pathway which it's able to remove misconceptions. And I apply this to the diaphragm area, upper chest area.
So my oils to use on this journey and to support me to get stronger with these love agreements is magnify your purpose, which creates focus and clarity and gets me out of a state of confusion, and grounding, which also helps me be, have a connection with my inner knowing, not being lost in the direction that I'm going. And interestingly enough, both those oils are applied to the lower back region. And then my other two oils is abundance, so that I have plenty, I ask and I accept, and white angelica, so that I feel connected that with all that is, and I go to a loving space. And those two, interestingly enough, are similar areas of application, which is the heart alarm point. One, however, is used, white angelica is used on the heart point on my left palm, and abundance is used on my heart center here in the chest area. And I have to add present time, actually. I love present time. And this was more intuitive. I picked this up and diffused it last night. And the reason why I like it is because it has neroli in there, which is very calming and centering to the nervous system, but also very supportive of self-worth. And it's a beautiful oil to have so that you're more present in the moment.
Fantastic. All right. So last off that I wanted to share here was that we have an upcoming masterclass. It's called the Aroma Masterclass, where we get to share the 3 key secrets for you to instantly comprehend and understand essential oils and communicate it, more importantly, almost as a therapist without all the years of training. To register for it, we've limited it to being 50 seats only, and it's coming up on the 11th of November. You visit our website, ascensionacademy.au, and you press on the workshop button. Scroll on down, and you'll be able to register for the masterclass itself. Tickets are free and available, and it's on the 11th of November, 2023. If you're unable to join us live, we'll also have the replay inside of our Academy login. You get to create a free login and watch all of this juicy information around essential oils. So this particular masterclass is going to be live in 18 days. Both Audrey and myself are going to be hosting that one particularly for you. Other than that, thank you so much for joining our podcast. I'm your host, Tumai.
And I'm the other host, Audrey, and we'll see you soon.
Slow the road that you're on, keep it going. When the going gets rough, just remember how a heavenly touch lasts forever. In the end, we are one. I have the patience in my soul, 'cause I know that it's worth it.